All right, we're in the afternoon sessions, and I should say good afternoon. Welcome to the 40th CALLERLAB convention in Cary, Raleigh area. Does that sound right, Carolinas? This is March the 25th, and the session is Maintenance and Mechanics of Voice. I am Paul Henze, and your panelists today are going to be Mr. Ron Markus to my immediate right, and then Mr. Randy Page to my far right. Let me give you a little background on the fellows that are presenting. All three are caller coaches, and let's look here from Ron's standpoint. Ron's been calling for about 43 years. Of course, he's a CALLERLAB accredited caller coach. His home program is at Sun City, Tucson, where he's called, cued, and taught lessons for the Sundancers Square Dance Club about 23 years. He and his wife, Kathy, own Desert Gold Recordings, which has produced 30 singing calls and hoedowns since 2001. And he has conducted many intra-sessions at CALLERLAB and taught previous caller schools in Arizona, Colorado, Kansas, and Nevada. Hand, please, for Ron Markus. And the second young fellow that we have up here is Randy Page, and Randy has been calling for approximately 40-plus years, and in the coaching ranks for about 25 years. He's went for 4 years for voice study in college, so we do bring some credentials to you for the school here. And he studied vocal pedagogy with Elizabeth Blades from her standpoint and her background. And Randy and I first met each other when we went to the Super School East with four gentlemen years back when we were working our caller coach. So if we can give a hand here for Mr. Randy Page. My name is Paul Henze, and I came into square dancing in a funny way. I started off with clogging first, and then after we clogged for a number of years, and we did some show dancing up in Nashville, which is a pretty prominent place for a lot of Western stuff. We then came back, and I saw some square dancers that were upstairs in a second story from where we were. And being curious, I walked up there, and this was 1979. And this is where we first got into square dancing, was in 1979. I physically started calling in 1983, did it a funny way. We were having graduation for our class, and one of the caller walked up and says, "Paul, take this record, and I want you to learn the singing call for me and do a lip sync." And I missed the lip sync part and put it over and learned and just did the singing call part. Well, you know what happens. You do the singing call part, and everybody claps and thinks that's okay, and your head goes from size 6 to size 46, and then you're kind of hooked at that point. So here we go, and I'm off into calling. Got into coaching in 1991, took testing, both oral and written, and became a caller coach in 91, and then I became caller coach chairman in 97. So this is as much as we can give you, and what we're up here with is that those of you that may have been here for years, remember the man by the name of Dr. Arden Hopkins? Arden was the guru that was around for years and years and years and blessed us with his wonderful knowledge with what voice is all about. And we had 3 or 4 different sessions, and of course when Arden says it's time for me to retire and get out of the routine, he made suggestions, and of course last year was our first jump off to get into the voice with other than a professional in terms of Arden's situation. And they gave it to us as coaches and said, "Hey, would you carry on the tradition as much as we can and get us into the voice part mechanics?" Now here is what our tasks were today. This session is going to present the mechanics and maintenance of the voice to enhance calling skills. Methods on various techniques used to correct voice problems will be presented, and important information on the care of your voice will be provided. So this is our goal today. We're going to go from point A, where you can sing with a voice, to that of being a prepared, and we're going to leave a question mark, because at the end of this, we're going to see what the preparation will be at this point. We're going to turn it over to Mr. Ron Markus first, and Ron will have the mechanics, and then Randy will do and work with you with how to work with your voice. And then I'll finish it up, and I gave you a handout earlier, and we'll be doing some handouts on the caller's equipment and some tricks of the trade and rules of the road for you to use, okay? Here is Ron.
We alive? Okay. All right. I've been asked to kind of go over the mechanics and anatomy of voice, and I suppose the first thing to ask your question is, what is your voice? It's made up of the things that put your voice together are three things: your lungs, the vocal cords themselves, and what are called articulators: the tongue, the cheek, the lips. That's what's the other, or the palate on top of your mouth. So all those things together are used all in conjunction, and they all have to be used at the same time. You can't use your lungs and not your vocal cords to make sound. So what happens is when you breathe in, everybody know how to breathe? Belly breathing, tummy breathing, whatever you want to call it. Take a nice big, get your chest expanded as far as you can, and then when you breathe from then on out, it's belly in and belly out. Chest doesn't change. What you're doing is you're giving your lungs, which is the first component of voice, you're giving your lungs the first chance, or best chance, to get as full as possible. I read somewhere that it says that if you don't expand your lungs first, if you do expand your lungs first, then when you're breathing properly, you'll have 2 to 2.5%, or 2 to 2.5 times more lung capacity, and allow yourself that lung capacity, which in other cases you wouldn't. So try to be, when you do breathe, that's what you want to do. Belly breathing, and get your chest expanded as much as possible. And then after that, the chest doesn't move, the belly does. Because the diaphragm will go up and down, and you'll help to fill your chest, your lungs up better. The vocal cords themselves are right behind your Adam's apple, basically. And if you could cut your head off right above the Adam's apple and look down inside, that's where you see the vocal cords. They're attached at the back and the front. Men have a little bit larger vocal cords because, in general, the bone structure is a little bit larger, and ladies have a little smaller, and that's part of the reason why the voices of a woman and a man are different. Not always, because one of the things I saw on one of the internet sites I went to, preparing for this, was a very large woman and a very small man. And they sounded like each other. The woman sounded more like a man, and the man sounded more like a woman. But that's just got to do with the body size. They look like a couple of rubber bands is what they look like. And if you have your vocal cords do. If you have a violin or a guitar, each individual string is going to be a different size. But we don't have the ability to make our vocal cords bigger or smaller. We can just make them vibrate faster or slower. So we're stuck with one set of vocal cords, and we don't have a string of a group of strings to use like you do in a violin. So the way we do it is the second part coming up. Now you've got your lungs filled with air. You're breathing properly. As the air goes by, you can use that air to either make yourself louder, or, as is the case with what we're supposed to be doing as a caller, is projecting, and that's getting the voice out there. The example they use here is that you can have lungs are filled, you can have your vocal cords doing what they're supposed to be doing. If you don't open your mouth, nobody's going to hear you except yourself, and you'll hear yourself inside your head in the nasal cavities and through your own bone structure of your head. So opening the mouth. For some reason, I've noticed television shows and movies somewhat. The past couple of years, the actors are just like this. They talk like that, and my wife and I are constantly, what did he say? What was that? So thank God for DVRs. We ran the back and we listened to it a little louder. It didn't make it any clearer. It made it louder, so we were okay. But your clarity is the thing you're after the most, because people have to be able to understand what you're saying. If you've got good breath control and you've got your lungs filled to capacity, your vocal cords will react the way they're supposed to as you go up and down the musical scales, and as you project or don't project your voice. Of course, you can do that by basically bringing your voice up from. If you bring your voice in from right in here, it's not going to project as well. If you get down further in your chest, you got all that extra bone and whatnot helping to get the sound out, and you can project, because you can say hey, or you can say hey. And one was a little louder than the other, but one was a projected. If you don't use the mic, hey, the voice was actually coming from you could feel it coming from a different place. Feel it coming from a different place in your body. Projection simply means getting the sound out clearly so people can understand what you're saying. Oh yeah, and the third part of it is the I believe are called articulators, which are the tongue, the palate, the cheek, and the lips. And if you go through the alphabet, sometimes it's maybe you're driving in a car from point A to point B. Go through the alphabet and look what happens inside of your mouth, or feel what happens inside of your mouth as you say these letters. A, B. Some will use teeth, some will use tongue, and together. Some will have your mouth open wider. But you generally want to have your mouth open wide because that's where the sound comes out. It's not going to come out anywhere else. Only going to come out of your mouth. So try go through the alphabet, A, B, C, D, and try the other sounds that you can make to see how your voice is working. Are the NG? Flip over the last page here. Oh, humming an M. You can hum an M, and you should feel your whole head humming that M, not just down in your vocal cords. Humming an N, it's the same way, but your tongue is going to be doing something different. You say M, your mouth is closed, the sound is there, and it's coming out through the rest of your head. If you say N, your tongue is in a different place. Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot. Your tongue is in a different place. You say N, your tongue goes up against there. So if you can say things like that, that'll help you to make sure you have clear enough voice. The other one is NG. Create the sound by saying the word hung, and you'll feel your tongue in a different place. And again, you should feel your whole head vibrating rather than just down in your throat. Big letters. Loudness and projection are not the same. Okay, loudness is simply turning the volume up on the amplifier. That doesn't make it any clearer. It just makes it louder. There are people who I've seen said, "Oh, you can't hear me? Good, I'll turn it up a little bit more." Well, if it was right where it was okay where it was, but you needed to project into the microphone, because if you work with newer callers, or you're newer, I don't know what the experience level is of some people here, but if you're a newer caller yourself, turning it up is not going to help you be clearer. Projecting, using the lungs, the vocal cords, and your mouth and face correctly, that'll get the projection that you're after. Because the microphone is a wonderful thing, but all it does is make things louder, not necessarily clearer. If you're mumbling, it'll just be a louder mumble, which doesn't get the job done either. We talked about belly breathing. Here's the 2.5 times. When we allow our tummy to expand, when we take in a breath, we can increase our lung capacity about 2.5 times. Well, the more air that's in there, the more you've got to work with to come out, to help with projection, to help with loudness if you do need it, and to help you hold on to long notes. Because there are, especially in some singing calls that we have to do, there are places where it's a whole lot of words to say and very little, a whole lot of words to say. So you have to make sure you have a breath and enough time to take a breath to get all that done. The one that comes to mind is an old song on hi-hat called Cowboy, and another one that Marshall Flippo did not recently, but Oklahoma Hills. And there's a whole lot of words to say, and you don't have a chance to take a breath in between those words. So breathing becomes very important in that kind of situation, and lung capacity becomes very important to you there. And also breathing when you get a new singing call, or a singing call that you've heard somewhere, or you pick it up from a tape or internet or someplace. If you go to practice to do it, practice the singing call, practice where to breathe in the singing call. Take the cue sheet that comes with it and make a little note. Breathe here, breathe here. If nothing else, after a while it becomes automatic. You don't have to follow your notes so much. But I've seen people try to do singing calls, and they're singing the voice. They're singing the notes. They're staying with the melody or the harmony, and it's all going fine. But they're not breathing, so they run out of breath halfway through a line. So you don't want to do that, especially in some of those ones where you don't have the time. The words come out, And you have to breathe at the beginning. You don't get to breathe again till the end. So increase your lung capacity and make sure you know where to breathe and where not to breathe. And just take the cue sheet right on here. Breathe here, breathe here. You know, just some code that will work best for you. Let's see. Oh, yeah, using the microphone well. Of course, you have to, the mics are supposed to, which I have not been doing, excuse me, talk into the end of it, not over the top, into the end of it, and that'll help you a lot because if you hold it down here, you'll get one sound. If you hold it here, you'll get more because you're using the microphone the way it was designed to be used, which is again an extension of that. And if you're projecting properly, the microphone becomes an extension of the lungs, vocal cords, facial movement, lip movement, and tongue and cheek movement. The microphone becomes an extension of that. It becomes the fourth item for your voice, to get your voice out there. I think that's about all I've got as far as mechanics are concerned. We talked about breathing. We talked about practicing breathing, putting the breathing in the right place on your singing calls. I'm not going to even try to get anybody to sing. One other thing. People may think this is kind of silly because we're square dads call us, we're not singers. But we are. Go have some voice lessons. Find a coach. And maybe you don't have to go through 5 years of voice lessons, you know. I know Scott did that from way back in high school. Scott was going to voice lessons and studying voice. But at least go to the coach, and the coach will be able to help you as a professional. He'll be able to help you use your tools, the tools that you have, your lungs, vocal cords, and your facial muscles, how to project properly. There are exercises. Dr. Hopkins used to do exercises on projection, and was the one he did. We hold your hand back here, then you hold the hand up here, and you could hear the difference in your voice, depending on where you were holding your hands as you spoke. If you didn't change the volume, it sounded different. There it is, sounded different. So, but get a vocal coach. Go find a vocal coach at a local university or a community college or something, and work with that coach. Just a couple of lessons, maybe a month or 2 or 3, to get yourself some solid fundamentals in voice. Okay, back to Paul.
Give him a hand. Thank you. Now, Ron just worked on the mechanics. Ron worked on the mechanics, the voice itself, the box, size, the breathing, some things like this. Randy is going to take some time here and is going to be working with you in terms of your voice and use of your voice, okay? How we can use the voice and the effectiveness of how to use the voice. Randy?
Thanks, Paul. First thing I'm going to do is have you, this doesn't sound like it's on. This sounds like it's on. Now it's on. I was saying, I project pretty well most of the time. I'm not getting anything. I want you all to stand up and get relaxed, because one of the most important things that you have to do when you're singing is relax. So let's talk about stance a little bit.
Allow me.
Yeah, you can hold that. I want to talk about stance. I would like you to take your feet and you align them underneath your armpits, because that's how far they should be apart. One of the interesting things Dr. Blades made me do when I first went to her studio is she has a ball that's cut in half, and you have to stand on it and balance yourself on it. And the reason you do it is because when you come off, you feel anchored to the floor, which is way you really need to feel when you're singing. And what I would like to do is do a little bit of imaging right now. In fact, you guys stand up too. I'm going to make you work too.
Okay, couldn't hurt.
That's, by the way, that's called command. You notice? I didn't give them an opportunity to say no, and yet I wasn't nasty in the way I said it. Your arms for right now, except when you're holding a microphone, need to dangle, okay? And you need to have your chest expanded the entire time, and you need to, he was talking about belly breathing or breathing with your diaphragm. Interesting thing about the diaphragm is it's shaped like an upside down bowl. And you might think it's a really large muscle, but it isn't. It's only about as thick as this folder paper. And to give you a size of what your vocal folds or in your larynx are, is size your thumbnail. A female's thumbnail for female's vocal folds, a male's thumbnail for a male's vocal folds. So they're not that big. So we want to relax, and then I want you to take a deep breath, and I'm going to have you do a little bit of easy vocalization, but we gotta make sure we're breathing right first. So let's take a deep breath, and then I'm going to ask you to phonate, and the way I want you to do it is I want you to concentrate on your nose, okay, when you do it. So let's do E. Hey, they all have a good sound. I'm actually very impressed, because a lot of times people have a tendency to talk way back here, but actually when you're singing, you want to bring your voice as, I don't want to say as far forward, because you don't want it this far forward, but you want to bring it in here, and the way my voice teacher always used to tell me to think about is thinking about I had a hole up here in front of my head, and I was shooting my voice through that. Yeah, well, they each have their different ways of thinking of doing it. An interesting thing was Scott was asking about when he came in. He was talking about something called magic hands. And magic hands is a technique that Dr. Zeller teaches. And but I want you to do something else first. I want you to choose a focal point. I'm choosing the coffee pot in the back right now. Okay, but I want you to choose a focal point in the front of the room, and I want you to rotate your head slowly to the right, but keeping your eyes on that focal point. So let's do that, to the right, and then back, and do it again, and then do it one more time. Now I'd like you to do it on the other side, to the left, and bring it back slowly. And again to the left, and bring it back slowly. And you're probably wondering why I'm having you do this, but it does help relax you. And let's try and phonate again. Are you ready? Oh, very good. I heard a difference in the tone right away. Now, the interesting thing is,
the projection from the group was
well, the projection was good. He was talking about opening up your mouth before, and actually I'll do that before I do magic hands. Something that I always use as a measure is, at a minimum, when you're calling, you need to be 2 fingers wide. So go ahead, put your fingers in. Describe it on the tape. Okay, so they can hear it on the tape. Is open your mouth and insert the fingers, and that's a real good gauge as to how far you should be opening when you're singing. And I make a challenge to you. Go and watch really good callers and watch them call and watch them sing, and they'll be at least that wide open. Some of them will be 3 fingers wide open, but there will be at least 2 fingers wide open. And there are a couple of reasons for it. One is, yes, it lets your voice out. But the interesting thing is it does an awful lot for your diction. If you think about somebody mumbling, they're not moving their lips very far apart. But if they're opening wide, that is one of the keys to clarity. So you want to do the 2 fingers wide open. Okay, so now we're going to do the magic hands. And Ron, I need you to hold the mic for me for a minute. Okay, And I want you to take your right fist, I want you to tighten it up as tight as you can, and then shake it loose. And I want you to do it again, tight as you can, and shake it loose. And I have a challenge for Scott at the end of this. Take your hand, tighten it tight, and shake it loose. And then do the same thing on the other side. The thing you might find interesting is I have a couple singing calls that are right on the borderline of my range. And if you watch me calling a dance some night, I don't know, Fran, if you've ever saw me do this when I was in New Jersey, but when I do Carolina in the Pines, and I'm hitting those really high notes, I've done this before I've done it, because I can't hit those notes unless I've done this first. I'm just about a half step short, but it just relaxes my jaw enough, and it does the same thing on the bottom. It actually gives me about a full step on the bottom and a half step on the top. And he looks incredulous. What was?
I'm saying that is I'm sorry. Yeah. The reason, Scott Byers, Sacramento, California, the reason I'm saying that is because I don't recall any high notes in that song. At least they're not high for me.
Oh, well, I don't sing it the normal way. At the end, I take it up a fifth.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, so and from the night on. Okay. Yeah.
That's kind of middle of my range.
Well, then you have a higher range than I do, and I'm not.
That's why I was thinking.
Yeah, but it's probably a pitch or two higher, but it's that type of thing. It gives me an extra half step. Greg.
This is possibly a silly question, but do larger men have a physiological advantage diaphragm size-wise over skinny beanpoles like me?
Well, the big opera singers. Actually, we don't. I wish we did, but in fact, we don't. And in fact, being fat like this restricts the amount of breath that you can take in. It does not improve the size of your lung capacity at all. In fact, it has a tendency to restrict it. I wish you were right. I really wish you were right, but no. In fact, the interesting thing about the diaphragm is it attaches in the back. It has two little tails where it attaches to the rib cage in the back. And it's basically, once you've reached your full maturity, it stays the same. Your diaphragm does not change. But boy, that would be a neat idea. Then I could justify this large collar's muscle. Okay, you're at a dance and you're singing and you're performing, and the interesting thing is Dr. Zeller, who Derek studied voice with and who I've had some vocal ped with at our studio up in Rochester, developed what is considered to be the main way that voice teachers are teaching now. It used to be that they considered a vocal apparatus to be from the diaphragm up. And they've now changed that and said, no, your whole body impacts how you sing. Your foot stance can make a big difference if you're not far enough apart, if you're too far apart. The other thing you should do is make sure that you don't lock your knees. Okay, so all the way down from where your feet are, all the way up. But then the interesting one was the hands, and I didn't believe the magic hands either. And she showed it to me, and then showed me with her piano. She said, "Here's your range. Now here's your range." So that's the way I found it. That was really very interesting. You're at a dance and you're performing, and there were two or three things, and Ron kind of alluded to it before. And one is, you have a long section where you have to have breath for a longer period of time. One of the things that's important is that you always have support. And my thing is that I don't ever let my tank get more than half empty before I replenish. So if I have a long note like that, number one, I'm going to take a bigger breath. Number two, I'm going to meter how much air is coming out to make sure I have enough.
Don't run out.
Okay? Yeah, you don't want to run out. This time I do want you to run out because I want to do it as an example with you. I want you to take a breath, and we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Did you see how my voice started getting weaker and weaker? Because I was intentionally letting myself run out. I want you to do that to get that feeling, and then we'll work on metering it. Ready? Take a large breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's start. Yeah, but you're metering. He's metering, and so we can meter and we can go much longer.
What did you mean by metering?
Metering how much air you put out, because anytime you're putting out air, you're actually metering it out. So
you want me to let the air out quicker? Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I thought you meant that you wanted me to try to keep the air from escaping, because that's what my training has always been.
Exactly.
Keep it from escaping.
And so what I'm trying to do is give them some of that training here, in the sense that one of the things you have to do is realize how much you're putting out at one time. And so now we want to stretch it a little bit. So let's try and go to 12, and let's all go to 12, but not lose support. So it means you've got to take a good breath. It means you need to push up with your pelvic muscles, because that's actually what pushes the air out of your lungs. And so let's try and do it. Ready? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, that's not good for your voice. Oh, no, it's not.
Feel like it's straining.
It could still be.
Even though it doesn't feel like it.
Even though it doesn't feel like it. In fact, he's going to get to in a minute about things you shouldn't do. Why don't you have a seat for a second? I'm going to talk about 2 things you shouldn't do. One of them is you should not take. Yes.
Ron Marcus, I'm on the panel up here, but I have a question from what you just said. You said you could strain your voice or cause difficulties for your voice by continuing on as the breath the air is gone, or it's almost gone, and you continue on. How would you strain your voice or your vocal cords that way?
Well, when you're phonating, you're vibrating your vocal folds very quickly, but the air is pushing them apart. You can keep going without having any air go through, or very small amounts of air going through, and then they start to rub against each other. And when they rub to each other, there's a possibility of developing vocal nodules. And now Greg has a question.
And to prove that I was paying attention in the earlier session today, I learned that the vocal cords have no nerve endings, so they can't feel pain. So therefore, you do not know if you're doing damage. That was a different session, and I was paying attention.
Yes, but you're quite correct. They do not have nerve endings. And in fact, if you know Bill Harrison, he actually tore one of his vocal folds. Didn't realize it till he went to the doctor, because he knew he had a problem, and was put on total vocal rest for a while. Okay? Because you literally can do that damage. And so I was going to warn them about one thing, is stay away from Hall's cough drops or peppermints when you're going to sing, because they even more so numb things, and you can't feel that you're doing any damage, and you can do some very serious damage to yourself in a very quick period of time. And I don't want to see that. And the other thing I was telling Ron when we first started was he's on a particular drug that you need to be care of. You need to be careful of one particular antihistamine. It's called chlortrimeton, is the or Benadryl. And that is known to cause swelling of the larynx. So you do need to be very judicious about using that. But I think we're probably running a little down on time, so I don't want to steal too much time from Paul. I'm okay? So I can go maybe another 30 seconds or a minute? Well, there seem to be quite a few questions coming up and whatever. So before we move on, questions or...
I have another question, but... Again, Scott Byers, Sacramento. When I spoke to Arden Hopkins before he left, actually it's Hopkin, but before he left, one of the things I asked him about was using something like Chloraseptic or something on the throat, because my belief was that it's like an idiot light. You take out an idiot light in your car and it causes, it could cause damage that way because you didn't know that. What he told me was that wasn't true. It doesn't get down that far.
Well, okay. Derek and Arden used to have disagreements about stuff, and they'd be talking up here, and I wouldn't even understand them. I've always been told by every voice teacher I had to stay away from those and stay away from anything that can numb down there.
Well, I was too, but that's what he told me.
Okay.
I asked him that, so.
That's interesting.
Yes, I know.
So, any other questions? Well, before this next gentleman comes up, I want to tell you a couple of things. I've known Paul for a few years. He talked about meeting me at, we both went to Caller Coach School at Super School many years ago. But the thing about Paul is that he's been chair of the Caller Coach Committee longer than anyone else. And it is not an easy committee to be the chair of, because we all are very intelligent people, but we all have very strong opinions. And it makes it very difficult to be the type of person who can be the conciliator in that type of situation. So Paul Henze is a special person. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Henze.
Thank you. If you have not got the handout yet for caller's equipment, would you please come get one? I handed out some earlier, and would like you to kind of follow along with me, because what I've done is over the years, I've had a lot of good advice, and people pass on information, and we've gotten together in talks and people and sessions, and we've come up with a lot of information. And notice we're trying to give you the benefit of what we have found over the period of time will give us good times to work with. The problem is, in different parts of the country, you have a lot of problems, at least we do in the South, which is where I'm from in Chattanooga. We have a lot of problems with common allergies, and we have a lot of problem with pollutions. We're a heavily industrialized town in our area, and I'm a salesman, and I call in a lot of areas and work in a lot of areas where you have a lot of these problems. So your situation that it intrigues you from that standpoint is one thing. I'm guessing here, Greg, in your section of the country, as you go higher in elevation, does the allergy still present a problem to you, or the air is more refined?
At 6,000 feet, pollen allergies are still very common.
Even worse, right? And you're out of the Colorado area, right? Okay. So if you kind of follow along with me, you can kind of get a pretty good idea of what we're talking about. Now, stop and think the common sense reasoning. When you go in and out of an area, remember you're exposing yourself by your hands to everything that is going on with 30,000 other people entering and leaving somewhere. You've walked in this door, and if you had to open the door handle, then we've got X number of people in here that have passed through this in classes before this, and they've all touched, and they could have had something wrong. You've gone to the restroom and you've opened and closed the door. You get what I'm saying? It's very important that you stay with good, clean hands, because this is the area that all of a sudden we're going to touch our nose or our mouth, and in comes all this garbage that you've touched. And it lingers longer than you think it does. So you really got to keep common thoughts going for this information. You need to be sure that everything stays moist, and it's going to keep you vocally okay. Those of you that take medicines, you know as well as I do, the more medicines you take or the longer the effect of medicine in your system, what starts happening to you? You start to get cotton mouth. And you notice all of a sudden your tongue feels a little bit clingy. You'll notice I've got a lot of water, and I travel with this, and I drink it very commonly because it's one of the best lubricants that you can come up with. Keep on reading down the line, and we've put together some things, and you're going to think, goodness gracious, but look what we're talking about. Eat lots of onions and garlic. There is a odor-free capsule that you can take on the night that you're calling, and suggestion too, if you're not sure, you might can walk up and when you talk with someone, hold your head in front of the mouth and don't get too vocal with them up front. Eat lots of oranges, yellow veggies. Look at the different type of vegetables that we've listed here. Don't know whether across the country these are common vegetables that you like, but here in the South there's very little that we don't expose ourselves to. I realize that if you could be in the North, there might be certain things that you do not eat. And I remember when I went first to basic training when I was in the service in college, there was a lot of different things that we exposed to people down here, which was to boiled okra, then it was fried okra, and then it was grits, and then we had hominy. And you could see some people that were in other parts of the country say, what in the world was that? Well, we ended up telling them that grits was Southern ice cream. Except it wasn't cold. And these guys, their comeback was, we'll just put plenty of sugar and cinnamon on it, and it's okay. Drink lots of water. Now, notice that this is the common things of 8 glasses a day. You know, you got to be sensible about this. When the women cook food, you've got all the steaming that goes on. You've got a lot of moisture that's added there. If you buy certain types of meat, you know that meat's going to have some moistures to it. So when we say 8 glasses, think of this in terms of, okay, that could be a good thing to work for. Randy said earlier, avoid sweets and sugars. Even natural ones like honey, they sap the strength for 2 to 5 hours after eating. Okay? Keep humidified. Dance halls can be very dry. If you don't believe this, walk through carpet like this. It's winter time, and you walk up, and I touch Ron on the side of the ear, and you'll see his hair stand up straight. That is what we're talking about. So you need to keep yourself, realize if you're there in this environment, it's doing what to your vocal cords? It's drying them out. So keep plenty of liquids going.
I have a humidifier at home, and I have a humidifier at home, and I notice a difference when I stay away from home overnight. Like last night, I am drier today. I feel the difference, and I feel it in my throat and whatever. It makes a huge difference.
Right.
I have a question. You say eat lots of garlic and onion and garlic, and eat lots of orange, yellow veggies. What do they do for you that is good for you?
There's something with the chemicals that the good Lord has put in these particular things that seem to energize our immune system and give us the good capacity to function with a better voice. Talk to some of your good dietitians and people, and they will tell you limitedly that this are good things to use. Looking on, chicken soup. Remember back in the old days when you got sick and your grandmother would come into the picture and she'd tell your mother that she's doing the wrong thing, and she would say he or she ought to have chicken soup? Well, guess what? The doctors are coming back to this again because they're finding that the chicken soup was good all along. Look at the good quality vitamins and minerals. if you go to your doctor or you go to some dietitian, spend some time with these people and ask them physically if they work with many vitamins or minerals. Let me say this reservedly. A lot of your doctors may not have really studied this as much as you might find into a vitamin store. Now, granted, they're trying to sell you vitamins, but they are honest with a lot of what they will tell you on vitamins and minerals. Randy talked earlier about things that could help support your immune system. Here again, if you'll talk with your doctor and tell him what you do as a vocation or a second income or whatever you want to call this, and that you're a caller, and that you might have voice problems if you're on the road due to more mucus than usual in your vocal cords. Let him prescribe some things for you, or he may even have samples that he wants to give you. And tell him, of course, that you want to stay immune as possible for things that you're going to encounter. And secondly, where you'll be traveling. And thirdly, you want this for the long haul, not for the short haul, so that you can stay consistent, and he'll know how to hopefully work with you this way. Okay, don't just go in and see the spot doc and then you think that's taking care of your problems. Vitamin C. My wife's a big pusher of vitamin C, but I can remember as late as 2 weeks ago, had a lot of mucus on my throat. And, of course, your voice goes down to here, and your voice of singing range is way up. It's not just here. Well, she says take 2 or 3 of these. And, of course, you know yourself, the more you take, up to a certain point, the body will tolerate it, use it, and then if it needs to, it'll void what the differences that you don't need is. So vitamin C is great. Zinc lozenges, you can see what's written there. Aspirin, look at what aspirin does. Causes blood vessels to expand within the membrane so that if you use your voice a lot, they can easily bleed. Okay? Now, some of your doctors are going to tell you 81 milligrams per day would keep you, from his standpoint, less heart susceptible for any problems. That's a minimum, okay? Don't go over that is what they're thinking here. Hot, warm drinks, try lemon juice and hot water, no sugar. Remember we talked about no sugars before? It helps to thin the gummy mucus, which causes us to clear the throat a lot. Ginger in water, add the lemon. We were talking earlier when Randy said that there's some dryness that he feels if he stays in a motel. A lot of times if you would take the time, go in, turn your shower on if you're going to be there for a while, let the shower's moisture circulate in the vent system. And there you've got some moisture added to your system. Nasal area, postnasal drips. Let's see what's effective there. Air or ocean or saline nasal sprays are very effective in moving congestion from the nasal area. Inhaling steam or boiling water containing bay leaves can also aid in reducing congestion. Vocal exercises, Randy talked about this earlier, but if you're going to a dance, how long generally going from your home to a dance, what's the length of time most of you are traveling? 30 minutes, 45 minutes, hour? Hour minimum. Hour and a half usually. What are your vocal folds? They're muscles. Do you go out and you exercise and you just walk out there and all of a sudden you grab some weights and start lifting them? Hopefully you don't. Hopefully you don't, because you need to slowly work yourself up to where you can start tolerating some exercises that's going to take more demand for your muscles. Well, the same thing should go on with your voice. Lip syncing, buzzing, humming higher, humming lower. Okay? This is what Randy was talking earlier. This is what you need to do, thinking of this as a muscle that you need to exercise and work up to the use of it. Looking on the backside, throat congestion. Gargle with a teaspoon of sea salt, vinegar, and very hot water. Have any of you tried this type of a remedy? This is like a home remedy. We generally want to go out and get over-the-counter things. But these are things that you can actually travel with and keep with you. Notice it's very unfriendly to the bacterial viruses that we're talking about. Grapefruit juice is also very good, but slightly more drying. Problem, if you're taking something like a Simvastatin, or you're taking some sort of a drug that is toward the cholesterol needs, you have to avoid taking and drinking grapefruit juice. It is not good for you. Okay? So you have to kind of watch what's going on. Robitussin cough syrup, taken 1 teaspoon 4 times daily, is an effective phlegm reducer. Again, vocal exercises. General considerations. It's crucial for dancers and singers to get plenty of rest, drink lots of fluid, and exercise regularly. All right, let's see how much of this we can pass the test for. We get plenty of rest. What's the average rest that you can command in here? 4 hours? 5 hours? 6 hours? Be realistic. What number of hours of rest per day are you getting? Doctors recommend how many hours? 7 to 8 is what doctors recommend. If you're realistic, you're probably only getting 5.5 to 6.5. Because as we mature, I didn't say get older, as we mature, the body automatically demands that we have to get up and visit a receptacle and come back. Yes? So therefore, you're not getting the total hours that you think you're getting because of the back and forth. Best to eat a good meal 1 to 2 hours before a dance or festival. Yes, we do this. Then we get there and we've got finger foods laying out on the table. We've got our equipment set up, and what do? We go back and get something to eat, right? We're not guilty of this, I can tell. And therefore, here we are, and we're getting ready to call, and we wonder why we have a dry feeling in our mouth. All of a sudden we don't have the vocal range that Randy was talking about earlier. Do not drink alcohol before singing. Look what alcohol does. Excessively drying to the mouth as well as the throat. Smoking. Either around smoke, secondhand as you would pick it up, or physically yourself smoking. You know, you've heard, and even now we've got where the cigarette manufacturers finally have been told no more advertising cigarettes, knowing full well that the after effects of the smoke are as worse as the first-hand smoking. And secondly, we know the end result that could happen to us, COPD or the cancer routine. Avoid drinks containing ice. Why this? Change the temperature on the vocal folds, and therefore when you have something cold that's applied to something, is it going to expand or contract? Contract. And when it contracts, you do not have, look at me, you have, this is your vocal cords working, okay? If they contract, you don't have it to where they're going to be as close together as you would have otherwise. Avoid extremes in temperature. Excessively cold air conditioning is not very good for the voice. How many times have you gone and called a dance and had to stand right there, and guess what's over the top of your head? A cold air vent or a hot air vent. Okay? The drying action that could go on, or the way that you feel from a cold standpoint. Important to prevent dehydration. Drink lots of water again. Avoid cough drops or products containing eucalyptus. Randy said earlier, Halls, Victors, since eucalyptus causes a slight swelling in the vocal cords. Avoid any product containing pain-killing properties. Do not sing when the cords are swollen, indicated by a breathy quality or delay in phonations, or when pain is present. Some over-the-counter products that are particularly good, and we've listed those for decongestants. Never use what? Of course, C and D.
Didn't you say that the chlortrimeton, and this one says it's a good one?
Well, this one right there, notice it, there's a difference. There's an allergy which is the green box. Most of the ones that most people get over the counter is a different type of material, Deb.
To be specific, it's the chlortrimeton. That's allergy treating. That's the type that causes inflammation. The corticetin D causes hemorrhaging of the vocal folds, which is even worse. And eucalyptus causes swelling and numbness in that area, so that's why those are a problem.
Okay, and the last page were only two things that were put there for the to realize, of course, from a female standpoint, things to consider too. Okay, information that you've noticed. Anything else that you would like to add for these plus and minuses under the caller's equipment? Things that you've heard used, had doctors tell you. Anything that you'd like to add to the information?
Yes. Okay. Back to these things that came up, and while we were during your presentation, my doctor. I have sinus problems and allergies, and I live in Arizona, and sometimes they're really bad. But my doctor mentioned to me. I talked about 8 glasses of water. You know, and I try to drink a couple of bottles of water a day, 3 or 4 bottles a day at least, and then other waters too. He says, first of all, coffee doesn't count. Coffee is coffee, water is water. Sodas, lemonade, all that stuff, it doesn't really count toward the, quote, water. There are things that he called water equivalents that do count. Fruits. He says 6 to 8 to 10, depending on the size of them, grapes is a glass of water. I go, okay. Fruits that are, peaches and apples, things that have a lot of natural water in their water equivalents. And what they do is they will add to if you have a real difficult time, and I know people who do, maybe you do too, people who have a real difficult time just drinking water. That's just, okay, I need to drink water, but I can't get this much water down in one day. There are ways to get around it, okay? And the other thing was that on the last group here, you're saying, okay, it's do not sing when the cords are swollen, indicated by breath equality or delay in phonation, or when pain is present. I think we said that their vocal cords don't have nerve endings. So how would you know? Anybody? How would anybody know that there's pain there, other than the change in sound? And that's a question I have. I don't know the answer to it.
Well, the surrounding area is also inflamed, so that's if you feel it in your throat, really deep into your throat. That's how you would know that it's damaged. You don't actually feel the vocal folds being sore. You feel the area around it being sore.
And you would also hear your voice changing, and you have pain here. Right. Okay.
And let's hit what the delay in phonation means. And what that means is you go to sing and you start and there's nothing there for a quarter second, and then all of a sudden it starts. That's a delay in phonation. It should start immediately. And just so you have an idea, a woman's vocal folds will vibrate about 100,000 times a minute when they're singing. So, okay, I mean, we're talking about they literally flutter. And the man's don't go quite, about a tenor will go 75,000. Most men would be 50, 60,000. But that's still an awful lot of times that they're moving.
Okay, this is a fast thumbnail sketch on this maintenance and mechanics of the voice. Questions that you may have individually. Now's your time to come up with something. Voice exercises. Randy, you want to pick those up that he was talking about, the vocal exercises?
Well, one of them they had there was a lip buzz, and the lip buzz is okay, and what that's doing is it's getting the phlegm out of the way. Okay, one of the worst things that you can do is clear your throat. That's one of the absolute worst things you can do. If you have a voice teacher and you ever do that in front of them, prepare to be beaten up for 15 or 20 minutes about it, because it is literally rubbing the vocal folds together and causing trouble. So you don't clear your throat, you do lip buzzes. They're talking about other vocal exercises. Well, I was doing a little bit of metering before. If we've got a couple minutes, why don't we do a couple of exercises? That would be good. So everybody stand up, because it's really not good to do them sitting down. And you say, well, why isn't it good to do them sitting down? It's more comfortable sitting down. Because remember, we were talking about the stance and everything before. Well, when the body is in the proper position, everything works more easily. And the fact is when you're sitting down, you're constricting how much your diaphragm can move. And when you're standing up, you see, immediately I get a little more projection.
What about this? See how I'm sitting here?
Well, that's absolutely important. Anytime when I was in choir at school, it was always, we had to sit like that during the times that we were singing.
Right. This is okay if you're sitting.
It's okay. And the important thing is, and let's describe how he's sitting. Okay. Notice that his back is not touching the back of the chair, and that it's at a 90-degree angle, and his rib cage is fully raised. Okay. If you're sitting back or you're slouching, okay, one of the difficulties is most of us are traveling to a dance in the car. And if you want to vocalize when you're in a car, talk to your spouse. Because actually just that amount of vocalization does some good warm-up for your voice. But the problem is if you start to phonate when you're in the car and you're not in a good position, you could be restricting the amount of air moving through, and hence possibly causing your vocal folds to vibrate. I can see if Greg has a question here.
No, one should note, too, not only does the posture improve, even though sitting, the whole vocal thing, but the costume presents a very good image while doing the sitting in a perfect posture.
I'm taking notes.
Well, and I want you to notice, I noticed something that Greg talked about before, and I always realized that Greg specialized now in one-night stands. And I just couldn't figure it out, because I figured from where he was from that he had to be a high-level caller. I was waiting for that chance. Hey, let's talk about one other thing, and you may not have noticed it when he was sitting before, and I probably didn't talk about it enough. We have a tendency to slouch a little bit, and when we're standing in terms of phonating, you want that neck to be pretty straight. You don't want it way back like this, but you want it straight, because you don't want to be, if you're down like this, you're actually pinching the larynx. And you want it up. So could you hear the difference in my voice? Just making that little bit of move. I'm keeping the microphone the same. It's pinching off the air, and it's pinching the larynx.
And go the other way, because guys think you're going to do a high voice like going like that.
Yeah, but putting your chin up still is a problem, because it's all about alignment. You want everything to align. You want your jaw to be relaxed. You want your arms and your hands to be relaxed. I was telling Scott a little bit earlier, Mike Jacobs used to do 52 weekends a year. And he found when he had a 4-day weekend, he always lost his voice. And the problem was that he was gripping his microphone too hard through the weekend, and it was causing tension up his arm and tension into his jaw, which caused him problems. And just by getting him to change the way he held his microphone, the problem went away. So let's do a couple of exercises. What would I do if I was warming up on my way to a dance? Well, I would start low and move high, okay? I'm basically a baritone now, used to be a tenor. But I would start low and go high because low doesn't push your voice as hard. But I would, a good one is ma, mi, me, mo, moo. Let's try that. He's heard that one before. Ready? Ma, mi, me, mo, moo. Ooh. Ma, mi, me, mo, moo. Ma, mi, me, mo, moo. Ooh. Ma, mi, me, mo, moo. Ma, mi, me, mo, moo. Let's relax. Arlene, thank you for joining us. Hey, did you notice something? Did you notice how I was backing the microphone off? Right. And that's because as you go into your higher end of your range, you need more support, which means more air is going through, which means you're getting louder. And especially if I'm singing with another caller, I'll quite often back off my microphone if I'm going into my if I'm singing a duet with someone so that I don't overpower them. And I could have overpowered the microphone here, and you don't want to do that. Have a seat. Relax.
Okay, today hopefully you've had a workout on the mechanics and your maintenance of your voice. Thank you for your attendance. Are there any questions that we've left unanswered or thoughts that you would like to present before we end up here today? Let me say. Yes, if there is something that you would like to critique on this particular section, please hand it in to the home office. Suggestions for things for possibly next year, to have possibly another voice presentation like this, or suggestions to add to the voice presentation. They would love to hear from you. Okay? Let me thank again our three presenters today. One is Mr. Ron Markus. Good hand for Ron. Mr. Randy Page for his participation also.
And how about a thank you for Paul Henze?
Welcome to our convention. Hope you'll get around and see a whole lot more things, and we'll see you at supper. Thank you.
I didn't bring, I guess we're done with the session. I didn't bring any handouts with me, but I have a couple of things on my computer for handouts we've done from previous ones. If you'd like to give me your email address, I'll stick around for a little while. Give me your email address. I'll just send them off. It's only one or two small documents. So if you'd like to have information about what I did today, with some of the things I did today, Paul had a handout. So if you'd like it, just give me your email address and I'll email them to you.